for you. West Virginia children's book writer Sarah Sullivan's book, Passing the Music Down, and she has copies available today at very reasonably priced, only about $10.80. And it's based on the real-life story of celebrated West Virginia old-time fiddle players Melvin and Krack. It's a delightful book. I read it yesterday. Take a look. And it's a nominee for the West Virginia Children's Choice Book Award, as well as being an NCTE 2012 Notable Children's Book in the Language Arts. Sarah has written 3 additional picture books, 2 of which are up here, that you can take a look at. Her poetry has been published in Cricket, and her first novel for young people is forthcoming from Candlewick. She holds an MFA in writing for children and young adults from Vermont College of Fine Arts, where she won the Harcourt Post-Graduate Scholarship. She's also a recipient of an individual artist fellowship grant from the West Virginia Commission on the Arts. She came all the way here from Charleston to be with us today, and you can learn more about her books at her website, Sarah with an H, SullivanBooks.com. She has some literature here as well. And as you can see, also joining us today, I thought it would be a good idea to have some old-time music to add to the atmosphere. Richard Pollack and Scott Black of the Captain Fever String Band. Did I say something wrong?
No, they're not.
Oh, they're out of sight.
We are out of sight, though.
And I think they're going to play some tunes first, is that right?
Sure, yeah. We're going to...
Okay, let's open with some music. Here they are.
So we're actually very excited to be part of this because first of all, I love the idea of the book. What you see on the cover is the way people learn to play these instruments. You kind of wander around and bump into people that will show you, who have the patience to show you something. So you do. Now, there are a bunch of songs I know that are mentioned in the book, and we play some of them. One of the tunes that I just kind of fell in love with was one called Peg and All. And the first time I heard it, I thought, I've heard people play this, but I couldn't figure out what they were saying. Now, it turns out Peg and All, back in the days, like in 1800, if you were working in the shoe factory, and this is probably one of the first kind of like labor songs almost. You sat there all day with your peg and your awl, and you punched the little holes so they could sew the shoes in. And right about 1805, I think this song actually, which became a real popular fiddle tune called Peg and Awl, was about a machine that came in, which was called the pegging awl, which was a mechanical machine that replaced everybody that used to sit there and do their stuff. So it's such a cool song that we kind of, I want to say we haven't played this more than a few times, but it's got a neat little story to it, so we're going to try to maybe play it. So it kind of goes like this. Back in 1801, Peg and Awl. Back in 1801, Peg and Awl. Back in 1801, Peg and shoes was all I done. Back in 1802, Peg and Awl. Back in 1802, Peg and Awl. Back in 1802, Peg and shoes was all I do. Hand me down my peg, my peg, my peg, my awl. Now in 1803, Peg and Awl. Now in 1803, Peg and Awl. Back in 1803, Peg and shoes was all I'd see. Hand me down my peg, my peg, my peg, my awl. Back in 1804, Peg and Awl. Back in 1804, Peg and Awl. Back in 1804, don't want to see those shoes no more. Hand me down my peg, my peg, my peg, my awl. Now they invented a brand new pegging machine. They invented a brand new pegging awl machine. Brand new machine, prettiest thing you've ever seen. Hand me down my peg, my peg, my peg, my awl. It makes 100 compared to my one peg and awl. See the problem? It makes 100 compared to my one peg and awl. Makes 100 compared to my one. Now my pegging days are done. I'm hanging up my peg, my peg, my peg, my awl.
Thank you so much. There's a story that I have that fits right. That's amazing. And first of all, am I turned on here? Can everyone hear me now?
Yes.
That's great. First of all, thank you. Thank you, Sean, for inviting me to be here, and thank you, everyone, for coming. It's a pleasure to be here. This is a wonderful program you have. I looked at what's coming up in the future, and I wish that it were not 3 hours to drive up here because I'd be here. They're great programs. It's so perfect that he started with that song, and you'll see why as I go through this. What I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about how I came to write this book, and then the nice thing about children's books is I can read the whole book to you, and it won't take very much time. So, but let me start by telling you about where the story came from. It really started with this man and probably with this photograph. That's Melvin Wine. Some of you may have heard of him. He was a pretty renowned old-time fiddle player from Braxton County, West Virginia. He was born in 1909. And he really lived a 19th century life virtually in the 20th century. And that was part of what fascinated me about this story. He came from a family of musicians going back several generations. He only went to school to the 3rd grade. He really didn't read or write, but he accomplished a remarkable amount in his life. He won the old-time fiddlers contest at Vandalia, and that's when I heard him playing at Vandalia on the grounds of the state capitol in Charleston. And I started going to listen to him play, and I was just taken with him and with his story because there was such a spirit of generosity in his face and in his manner, and people would always crowd around him because his life was really dedicated to giving away what he had. He had very little. He lived on a farm in Braxton County. He and his wife raised 10 children. They then fostered, I don't know how many children after that. He made a living as best he could, driving a coal truck. He was a miner for a while. But he had this dedication to passing on the old-time music that was a part of his family tradition. And as Aaron Marshall, who wrote one of the books up here, and thank you, Sean, for putting these books out, they're the sources I relied upon as well as actual line of research. She wrote a book called Music in the Air Somewhere, and she is an old-time fiddle player herself. She's from Canada, but she lives, I think, in Grundy, Virginia now. And she has said that the thing about old-time music is it's not just the tune that someone passes on to you. It's where you were when you learned the tune. And when that person passes the tune on, they don't just say, let me teach you peg and all. They say, let me show you a tune that my great uncle taught me when we were in such and such a place at such and such a time. And so there's all this culture and lore that gets passed on with the music and is a big part of the tradition of old-time music. So anyway, that's who Melvin Wine was. This is a picture from the Charleston Gazette. It's just such a wonderful picture. I mean, look at that. As I say, I was fascinated with him also because of this part of his story, which ended up not going into the children's book, but it was just so interesting to me. He and his brother Clarence played at farm raisins and bean stringings and dance halls through the 20s and 30s. Up until during the Depression, Melvin used to say that as times got harder, the dances got rougher. There was a lot of drinking. And so he and Clarence were playing one night at a dance, and this man who was obviously drunk went up to a young girl about 12 and started talking really meanly to her and cursing at her. And an older woman came over to the two of them and said to the man, you need to stop that right now. And the man looked at her and said, I'll just do as I please, leave me alone. And he went on treating the young girl the same way. And as Melvin said, a few minutes later the man dropped dead on the floor. And he said, now that made an impression on me. And he decided that that was a sign that he should stop spending so much time playing music and spend more time with his family. And so he put the fiddle away for 20 years and didn't play at all. Put it on top of the closet and did not touch it for 20 years. And he also, his wife also around the same time nearly died from typhoid. And so he sort of went and underwent a sort of religious conversion, changed his life, didn't play the fiddle, until 20 years later he was babysitting grandchild one day, and she wouldn't stop fussing, he said. She kept crying. So he went and got the fiddle, took it down, started playing. She started dancing and laughing, and he decided if it could make a baby happy that way, then it must not be so bad after all. So it really fits into that whole tradition about the fiddle and being the devil's instrument, you know, those stories that you hear. I mean, it's sort of a live example of that story. Well, when he started playing again, it happened to be in the 60s. So it was the time of all the folk festival revivals and sort of a return to old-time traditions. And he soon began winning awards and contests. He ultimately received a medal from the National Endowment for the Arts as a national treasure. So that was his story. I felt like I needed to tell his story. I write books for children, so that was the format that I was trying to write in. And so I started out with the line, in his red plaid shirt, with his hands gnarled from working, Melvin Wine played his fiddle with a long bow arm. Now, I've since asked a lot of fiddle players, what's a long bow arm? And they give me a very puzzled look and say, I've never heard of that. But it was a term that I had heard Melvin use, so it was something that he referred to. That's where I started. I wrote a story, I sent it to my editor, and she said, well, it's a lovely, it was really written as a poem or a ballad. And she said, it's lovely, but, you know, you need, the protagonist really should be a young person. This is a book for young people. What I had done was tell the story up to the point where Melvin met this young man. And this is Jake Krack. This is when he was 10 years old. He was living in Indiana. He was taking initially Suzuki violin lessons, but his parents recognized that he had a passion for old-time music. No one in his family played a musical instrument at that point. Jake just loved old-time fiddle music for some unknown reason. So his parents found a teacher for him, a man named Brad Leftwich, who taught him bluegrass and old-time fiddle music. He had recordings of Melvin Wine playing fiddle music. And he told Jake, if you really love this music, you ought to get your parents to take you to West Virginia or to North Carolina to one of the old-time music festivals so you can hear these people in person, because their style of music is passed down from hand to hand. It's not written down, and they're up in years, and when they die, the music goes with them. So Jake talked his parents into taking him to the String Band Festival at Cliff Top in Fayette County, West Virginia. He was 10 years old. This was taken at Cliff Top. He found Melvin. That's a picture of Melvin, a little bit younger, as you can see, sitting on a table. And that's Jake. And what happened was, Jake heard Melvin play and introduced himself, and Melvin asked him, do you know any of my tunes? Jake did know some of his tunes because he had those recordings from his teacher. And so he said he played Peg and All, which you just heard. That was the first tune that Jake played for Melvin, and it was a tune that Melvin played a lot. I never knew the story behind Peg and All. That's fascinating. And the other thing is, it's in the book. And copy editors always ask tedious questions. I cannot tell you how much time I spent asking Jake and Dara, how do you spell Peg and All? It's in some of these books, like one of these. This is a wonderful biography of Melvin Wine, and it has a list of the tunes Melvin played. And I think it's in this one that Peg and All was spelled in a different fashion. Well, of course, I mean, it's a song that originated in the oral tradition, and however it's written down is an afterthought, basically. I mean, it started out just being spoken. But I had no idea. I mean, I did think about an all, but I had no idea where it came from. It's fascinating. That's, again, that's part of what's so interesting about old-time music. You don't realize how much culture and history is embedded in these songs. It's all there. So, anyway, they met at Cliff Top. This is an article from the New York Times that was, I think, 1999. What happened was that after this initial meeting, Melvin, being the kind of person he was, looked at Jake's parents and said, you ought to bring that boy to see me. So he invited them immediately to come to his farm in Braxton County. So they went back home to Indiana, and Preston County, and they spent some time with Melvin on his farm, and Jake started learning fiddle tunes from Melvin. They went back to Indiana. Melvin, at that time, Melvin was a widower. He was getting married in November of that year. He said, "I'm getting married, I want you to come to my wedding." So they came back and they went to the wedding. And long story short, they got a grant from the Indiana Arts Council and made probably 5 or 6 trips from Indiana to West Virginia until finally, after about 18 months, they moved to Calhoun County. Jake's mother, Dara, took a job as school librarian at Charleston Catholic, where she still works today. And Jake actually became sort of formally apprenticed to these old-time musicians. Melvin Wine, another man named Lester McCumbers, and that's the person this story was about. You can't see these pictures, but one picture on top is Lester McCumbers in his house, also in Braxton County. And then the bottom picture, that's Dara's mother carrying. She plays the guitar. She learned to play enough guitar to accompany Jake as he became more serious about his music. So Jake was actually apprenticed to Lester and Melvin, to Lester through a grant from the Augusta Heritage Folk Life Center in Elkins. And he studied with them. This is Melvin's farm in Braxton County. You can see it's a typical West Virginia hill farm. That's the biography I just showed you. They played together for about 7 years. They performed all around at festivals and fairs. They also became lifelong friends, and in a way, Melvin was like a grandfather to Jake. This is the book I was talking about by Erin Marshall, the old-time fiddle player from Canada. This actually was her PhD thesis, which was published. It's a really interesting book, and it's about traditional music. Those are Melvin's hands in the photograph on the cover. Love that photograph. So anyway, they played together for about 7 years. Jake was living in Calhoun County, right across from Braxton County, and I mean the story is all true. When he was 93, he was almost 94 when he died. Melvin suffered a stroke, and he actually was hospitalized, and Jake went to the hospital and was holding his hand when he passed away. So it's just this extraordinary story of a mentor and his young student. I mean, it's like Merlin the magician, and King Arthur. It's like not Darth Vader. It's like Obi-Wan Kenobi. Luke's wrong. Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker. I mean, it's this mythic story of the wise elder who passes on life lessons to his student, and it really happened in person. Jake went on to Berea College. I mean, there's so many little things that give you chills. Melvin passed away in the spring of Jake's senior year in high school. It was like his job was done, you know. Jake went to Berea College. As many of you probably know, at Berea College, there's no tuition, but all the students work. And Jake's first job was cataloging recordings of traditional musicians for the library at Berea College. And of course, many of those recordings were of musicians with whom he'd studied. So he was literally preserving the tradition immediately. Since he graduated, he teaches fiddle, he performs with the Bing Brothers, and he teaches at the Allegheny Echoes program in the summertime. And he is just back from performing in Australia at a music festival there. So he's 28 years old now, I think. So it's just, you know, I was just fascinated by the story. And I tell people the other thing is, I always wanted to tell it. I tried to tell it, making fictional novel characters. It didn't work. And then 9/11 happened. And I think in the aftermath of that, just the idea that things survive catastrophe and destruction, and oftentimes the way they survive is person to person, is in small communities away from centers. People pass on cultures and values and traditions. And 9/11 helped me see how valuable that really is. I mean, I think I knew that, but it just seemed even more valuable after that. And I think I was pushed to tell it after that. It was easier to find a way to tell it, which you'll wonder Actually, I wrote this, and the publishing company bought it in 2006. That's a whole nother subject. Picture books take a very long time. So it actually came out in 2011, but the story was written in 2004 or 5, basically. So before I talk too much more, I think we ought to have some more music, and then I'll read the story.
Well, that was really nice. I was just telling Scott, I can't wait till I'm 28, though.
Me too.
It's a tune called, again, you're right, some of the song, the titles of things, they've just been verbally, it's like that story where you get on a stage and somebody tells a story and it passes. And things change, but it's really nice because you can go back and find some, reference to it. This is a tune called Old Molly Hare. And, it has an interesting story, but we're not going to tell it now. We're just going to play it. 1, 2, ready, go.
So, I think I'll just take some time now and read the story. And now that you know the true story, you'll understand, that it really is what actually happened. In fact, a lot of the dialogue are direct. Obviously, they're not quotes from Melvin because he had passed away, but they are things that both Jake and his mother told me Melvin said. So I tried to be as true to all that as I could. So here we go. Passing the music down. Come August, with corn strutting high in the fields and tomatoes pumping out on the vine, folks get to talking about tuning up and heading over twisty mountain roads to hear fiddle players and banjo pickers make music under the stars. They travel through the heartland, past coal factories and drifty towns, to the old mountains slumbering east of Tennessee. Come to hear a man bent by stooping in the mines. Come to hear him lift his bow and set his spirit free. Play Liza Jane, shouts a boy from the crowd. Traveled clear from Indiana just to hear that fiddler play. With his hands gnarled from work, the old man lifts his bow, gives a nod to the crowd, and saws out a lick. passing the music down. Play some more, asks the boy. Then he strides up front, takes a seat beside the fiddler on a tall wooden stool. Know any of my tunes? Asks the old man. The boy lifts his arm and plays peg and all, his chest near to bursting with all that inside. It's pretty good, the old man says. You gotta start with a spin and end with a skip. That is something Melvin used to say. Like a kitty did in spring, the boy's heart dances. Will you teach me all your tunes, he asks with the gulp. Will you show me how they go? I want to play like you. The fiddler wipes his brow, takes a long, slow look. You ought to bring that boy to see me, he tells the young man's folks. Pay a visit to the farm and we'll play some old-time tunes, passing the music down. Rolling up the holler through the early morning mist, the boy's father steers the car around two friendly old hounds. Been wondering when you get here, the old man tells the boy. Got a lot of things to show you. I hope you'll spend some time. They flip flapjacks for breakfast. They have ginseng in the woods. They plant runners in the garden. And when the work is done, they sit out on the porch. The old man tunes his fiddle and the boy leans in close. They play Bonaparte's Retreat and You Piney Mountain, tunes older than the towns the boy traveled through, tunes old as the road, old as the mist and twisty as the roads, passing the music down. Soon the boy and his family are putting down roots in the next county over for the old man's farm. On cold December nights, they fiddle by the fire. Snow settles deep against the fence, and the boy settles deep inside the music. The old man shares his stories. They've become the best of friends. When the creek swells in spring and the rooster cockadoodles, they gather fiddleheads for lunch and mend fence posts by the well. Seedlings dot the garden when they fiddle down in Charleston. That's Vandalia. Bees nuzzle honeysuckle when they jam up at Glenville. That was the State Folk Festival. Frost stiffens hay bales when they teach out at Elkin. Augusta Heritage. Their lives are stitched together in a quilt of old-time tunes, passing the music down. Life scoots along. The boy's back grows straight and tall. The old man's knees turn wobbly. He turned 90 a few years past. Still he tends the garden and plays music with the boy until one cold, frosty morning just before spring, the old man's legs won't move the way they need to go. He can't lift a log from the woodpile to the fire. Can't make the journey from his kitchen to the porch. Sitting at his bedside, the boy holds his friend's hand, hums a tune low and soft all the way to the end. Sees the old man smile when he hears the boy's words. I'll do just like I promised. I'll teach folks all your tunes. There's a part of you that will always be around, passing the music down. Now the years have passed since the old man taught the boy. The young man plays his fiddle at festivals and fairs. Play Liza Jane, shouts a boy from the crowd. Traveled quite a distance just to hear that young man play. The fiddler lifts his bow and plays the old-time tune. There's an echo in his heart as he saws out a rip. He hears the old man's voice in a memory deep inside. Play that fiddle, son. You got to pass the music down. Before I talk some more, would you all mind playing another tune? Okay.
Well, and since it's about, really the thing that you talked about, where you learn from other people. Right after I got out of high school, I went to track Scott down and had him teach me all these songs. Wait, but I thought we'll play some twin fiddle. So, I'll flop here.
And while they're tuning up real quick, if some of you noticed when I read that it said clear frosty morning up there and I said cold frosty morning, that was a mistake that we picked up. The book says cold. At this stage, when the slides were made, it still said clear, and we missed that. So I just went, okay, cold Frosty Morning, of course, is the name of a tune, and that's what it's supposed to be.
And one of the springs slip there. A good old fiddle tune that you're going to hear everywhere is called Flop Your Heels. All right, flop on.
It's all just the truth. The only thing I made up were the two friendly old hounds. Everything else is. And Jake, I asked Jake about that. He said, well, Melvin did have some dogs around, so maybe that's true too. But the book, I put an author's note at the end. People often ask, is it fiction or nonfiction? And it's really sort of a hybrid. As I said, I was telling what I considered a universal story in the context of a real story. And it really is all true, but there are a couple of liberties, like sitting in his bedside, I won't go back to that, but actually it was in the hospital. If we were to call it nonfiction, it would have to be absolutely accurate. The photographs, the pictures, the illustrations would have to match photographs and be absolutely true. So we weren't aiming for that, and so it's categorized as fiction, but it is really all true. And this tells us the real story with names of the people and the places. I have a little note on the tunes. Pony Mountain, Melvin used to say, in Lester McCumber's places, he's still living, he's in his 90s, it's supposed to be one of the oldest tunes in West Virginia, so that was why I used it to talk about being old as the mist. Lots of the resources are up here. I also relied on videos and in-person interviews with Jake. And I don't know if you all have this video, but I got it out of, it's in the State Library Commission library, it's also in the Kanawha County Library. It was done by Jerry Milne at Augusta Heritage, and it's called Fiddle, Snakes, and Dog Days. I don't know if anyone's heard of that. But if you have an interest in sort of country wisdom and old-time culture, it's fascinating because it's an interview with various people, including Melvin, about some of the traditions. I think that's the one where Sylvia O'Brien, who was another old-time musician, talks about Old Christmas and how the animals were supposed to get down on their knees and pray at the stroke of midnight on Old Christmas. Has anyone ever heard that story? And about planting an ash tree because snakes are not supposed to cross an ash tree. Have you ever heard that? That's another one. Really interesting things that I've never heard. So anyway, that's another subject. But those are the resources. So I was just going to very briefly, in a few minutes, talk about how something becomes a picture book. I had photographs which I sent to my publisher, Candlewick. They're an independent publishing house in Cambridge, Massachusetts. They started as an arm of a British publishing company. They do beautiful books, and I'm absolutely thrilled, honored, delighted, cross my fingers, hope nothing bad happens that I get to publish with them, because it's the best thing that's ever happened to be able to do that. They're wonderful. So anyway, once I sold the manuscript, my editor and I worked on it until we got it the way we liked it. The next thing that happens with a picture book is that the editor sits down with the art director at Candlewick. They pull portfolios of artists with whom they've worked in the past. They try to match the text with an artist. Candlewick involves the writer more in that than a lot of places do. My editor actually asked me before she starts that, what style of art do you envision? If you could have your dream illustrator, who would it be? That gives her an idea of the art I have in mind. Once they narrow the possibilities down, they'll send me samples of the work of the illustrator they're going to offer the story to. They then send the text to that person, ask that person if they would be interested. If they are, it would then go on that illustrator schedule. So we sent these photographs. This is Jake at Melvin's farm, first time he visited. This is Jake and Melvin. I think this might be in Elkins. Looks like, but I'm not certain. You can see Jake is growing up and Melvin's getting older. This is toward the end of Melvin's life. Now I'm going to go back to talking about bookmaking. So we sent these photographs. This is Jake in Melvin's living room to Barry Root when he agreed to do the book. And Barry Root is wonderful. I'm so lucky. We had to wait 2 years. That's part of the reason the books take so long, because he had several projects in front of mine, including a book written by the former poet laureate Ted Kuser. So we sent him these photographs. He lives outside of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. He had hoped to come to West Virginia, but he didn't have time to make the visit, so he relied a lot on photographs. Well, you can see why, again, why it's fiction. There's room for artistic interpretation. I'm sure that he relied largely on that photograph to envision this picture of playing during the winter time in Melvin's house. Here's another example. This is at Melvin's house on the porch. The lady is Jake's mother, Dara, and that's Jake, obviously, as a very young man, and Melvin. There's the sketch. You see, Dara's not in the story, so she's not part of the illustration. And there's the ultimate illustration. So you see there are a number of changes, but I love doing this. When I go in schools, I show kids the photograph, and I say, now, what did you see that changed? And they're always interested to see, for example, the fern. There's one fern. And the table, there's no table. What they're sitting on. I mean, clearly, it's a lot of it's aesthetics. And so, especially for the artists in the group, they're always interested to see how an illustrator goes from a photograph. And this is the first time I've told a story where there were real people to sort of inspire the art. The other, I've worked with a different illustrator every time I've done a book. So the 2 baby books that are up here, the sibling rivalry books, were just out of the illustrator's head. So this was a little bit different. Oh, that's another thing. This is part of the bookmaking process. That comes from the art director. I, of course, go back and forth with my editor on the words. The illustrator works with the art director on illustrations. And so, as you see, Melvin did wear glasses. There were glasses in the sketch. There are no glasses in the final art. And that was a comment from the art director. So it's sort of interesting to see how they arrived at the process. I like using that because this book, I was very lucky. It was reviewed in the New York Times. It so happened that a man named Gary Golio also published a book the same time about Woody Guthrie and Bob Dylan, about when Bob Dylan met Woody Guthrie. So they had sort of an old-time music theme, passing down music. and they reviewed my book along with Gary's book and used that illustration. So one other thing, in terms of vetting things and checking for accuracy, this is at the sketch stage, and I get sketches to check and see if anything needs to be changed, and I shared them with Jake and his mother. And I had written, place more ice boy than he strides at front, takes a seat beside the fiddler on a broad hay bale. And the reason I wrote that was, as I said, I used to hear them play together at Vandalia on the grounds of the state capitol, and they always put out hay bales, and everyone in the audience sits on hay bales. In my mind, I thought everybody's having hay bales. And Jake and Darrow said there is no way that you would sit on a hay bale and play the fiddle, and you probably can confirm that for me, it just wouldn't work. And so, you know, we were kind of far along in the process at that point. But I changed, I said, well, what do you sit on? And they said, well, there'd be wooden stools. So I had to come up with an adjective that was one syllable that would go in front of a wooden stool to make it stand. And as you see, the sketch initially had them on hay bales. That was completely my mistake. So ultimately they're on tall wooden stools. So, and Candlewick is really meticulous at every stage of things, checking things like that. When we were getting close to the end, they asked Jake to take a really close look at hand positions on the fiddle, and they said, if there's anything that's really wrong about this, we want to fix it, we want it to look as correct as possible. So, and they did make some changes. Jake made some comments, and they did actually change some things. So, again, these are some of the things I rely on. This is a collection of articles from Golden Seal magazine, and there's some wonderful interviews with traditional musicians. I use that a lot. And then, as you see, Jake has gone on. He's, you know, passing on the tradition of old-time music. Article about him in Fiddler magazine, and he was profiled in Berea College magazine. So it's just been fun to watch where he's going now. I think that's everything. So that's everything that I have. I'd love to answer a few questions, but maybe, yeah, let's do a quick tune and then maybe do some questions.
And we never sell hay bales because they just won't support our weight.
So does anyone have any questions about the story, or about writing for children, or the publication process in general? Anything at all? Not if you all talk. More. Yeah.
It's about you. Are you a native West Virginian?
I am. I was born in Vermont. My dad actually was from McDowell County. He grew up in McDowell County, and he worked for DuPont. So my mother was from South Carolina. So we moved. The reason I say that is we moved a lot. We were in Fairmont and Wilmington, Delaware, and then I went to first and second grade in Huntington, and then we lived in Littleton, Colorado for 8 years. So I really sort of grew up in Colorado from age 8 to 16. And then we were in Delaware again, and then moved to Charleston when I was in college. And I've been there after college. I actually went to law school at WVU, practiced law for 14 years. And now I'm doing this. Natural transition. I'm a bankruptcy lawyer, now I write children's books. People smile a whole lot more than they used to. It's very nice. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah.
When we have our arts festival in July, we hope to have Douglas Van Gundy here.
Oh, yeah.
Is he also, I understand, an old-time musician?
He is. And I don't know that much about his music, but he absolutely is. You should get him to play some music.
I hope to.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think Jake has played with him probably. In fact, I think on some of his CDs.
Yeah, I think that's my thought.
Yeah, I believe he has. And I should mention that I carry around. Jake has about 6 or 8 CDs out. This is the one I take with me because most of this was recorded when Jake was probably about, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 14, I think. I should know that, and I don't remember. And it's got some of the tunes on it that are mentioned in the book, including You Piney Mountain. So I often play this for kids in school when I travel, because I just like them to see. I mean, this is something they can do, you know. Jake just set his mind out to do something he was passionate about, and did it. So that's another thing I think is admirable about their story. Yeah.
Where is this college located?
It's in Berea, Kentucky. And, oh goodness, where is Berea, Kentucky exactly? Anybody know exactly?
Say near Lexington?
Yeah, I don't think it's very far from Lexington. Maybe like 45 minutes or something from Lexington, I think. Yeah. It's not a music school, it's a liberal arts college. And I don't know that much. I mean, I have a good friend who graduated from Berea, and I haven't checked this lately, but I always have known that I don't think anybody pays tuition. Does anyone know that? I mean, that used to be the case, and all students were expected to work on campus. And they used to, I guess they still have a catalog because they did handcrafted like brooms. So I've had some of their beautiful fiber lace brooms. Pardon me?
They do carving, weaving.
Carving and weaving, yeah.
Making.
Candle making, lots of traditional kinds of crafts.
In there.
Right.
Students run.
Right. Yeah, no, that's right. There's an inn that the students run. Students at the college run. So, yeah, it's a very special place, and it's so fitting that that's where Jake chose to go to school. Yes?
We've had a number of great old-time musicians from West Virginia, including the Lilly Brothers and Don Stover. Are you familiar with them?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Both of them. In fact, I just heard the Lilly Brothers play at Tamarack about a year ago, I think they played. Yeah.
Well, a couple of years ago, the Lilly Brothers were inducted into the West Virginia Music Hall of Fame.
Right.
And about 62 years ago, they appeared here in Wheeling on the WWVA Jamboree. And Don Stover, to me, is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, banjo player ever.
He is amazing. He really is, yeah.
Yeah, 2 of the 3 are now deceased. Lilly is still living and was there to accept the award at the West Virginia Music Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's a one. Yeah, does everyone hear that? The West Virginia Music Hall of Fame, the Lilly Brothers were inducted into a year ago, 2 years ago? Okay. Sometime within the last year or 2.
I'll tell you an interesting story about the Lilly Brothers. When when they appeared at the Jamboree at the Capitol Theater and the Virginia Theater here in Wheeling, they lived on Wheeling Island where I grew up. And my brother and a friend got to know them, and one of their great forms of recreation was to drive their limousine up to the local airport to watch the planes take off and land. And at that time, 62 years ago, there were two commercial airlines which flew into Wheeling, Capital and TWA, and they invited my brother and my friend and I to go up there one time in that limousine. If you go to youtube.com there and type in Lilly Brothers, you'll see a video that was done for their induction, and that shows their limousine, which I had an opportunity to ride in 62 years ago.
That's so cool. That's neat. Thanks for sharing that. Wow. That's such a great tradition here in Wheeling. I know my husband used to be really active at West Virginia Public Broadcasting, and he was always passionate about Prairie Companion. And I know that for years, Garrison Keeler wanted to figure out some way to be at the Jamboree, to bring the program to the Jamboree, and I guess just was never able to make that happen.
One more point, and that is they did not consider themselves to be bluegrass musicians. They consider themselves to be country folk musicians.
Right, and there's a definite distinction there. Anyone that plays, so I understand, I mean, I don't have any expertise myself, but as I understand it, anyone who plays real traditional old-time music considers that something different from bluegrass music. Yeah, it's an important distinction. Thank you.
The last remaining Lilly brother, must have been a year, or I can't remember, was at the Victoria Theater, which I videotaped. He played mandolin, and it was a lot of I think the children, grandsons and stuff like that. It was basically their band, but they...
That's Everett Lilly, right? He's the sole surviving?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's something anyway.
That's great, so it's videotaped.
Oh yeah, I have that. Another thing, Peg and All.
Yeah.
1950s. First time I heard Peg and All, it was by Darby and Talton. No fiddles. It was a guy playing regular guitar and Hawaiian guitar.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know of it as a fiddle tune per se. I knew it as that. Because as soon as he started mentioning, I started hearing it in my head, Peg and All, because that's not a common thing to hear in Brooklyn, New York,
No, I was going to say, your accent suggested. Yeah, but you heard it someplace else. Yeah. Anybody else? It's so interesting, so many stories that people have to offer. And the Music Hall of Fame has been wonderful for saving some of these stories. Michael Lipton really deserves a huge amount of credit because that's been his passion. He's part of the Mountain Stage Band, and he just decided to make that happen, and that's really why it has happened, because of his passion for it.
I'd like to say that I think we here in Wheeling are very fortunate to have some really great old-time musicians, and that is the Cabin Fever String Band, and we have two of their members here today.
Yeah, and let's, everybody.
Lunch thing, and I know a lot of people are skipping out at work to come here. Okay, this is a song when we talk about Bonaparte's Retreat. There are so many fiddle tunes that are Bonaparte's Retreat, and then if you're really a scholar of the Bonaparte's Retreat, there's like 3 different ones. His approach, his retreat. But one of the songs that we've done for quite a while is based on that song, and it's kind of a more modern tune. Well, let's play a little bit of it. It's kind of interesting. 1, 2, 3.
appreciate the opportunity. Please feel free to take any of the postcards or bookmarks that I have up here. If anyone would like a book, I've got some here. I've always got more in my car. Thank you.
Yodeling Dick here to tell you about a happening. Lunch with books. Lunch with books has books and crooks and hacks and cracks and yells and sings and rocks and swings with more and more. Lunch with books. Lunch with books. At the Ohio County Public Library in Wheeling, West Virginia. It'll make you feel like yodeling. Hey, yodie, 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 hey, yodie, yodie, mostly on Tuesdays at noon. Bring your lunch, we'll provide the pop. And it's all free. Lunch with